Will democratic socialism shine in the Sunshine State? Three far-left candidates are hoping to score upset wins in their Florida primaries tonight in what the New York Times calls, quote, hostile territory. Among them is DSA member Oliver Larkin, who's looking to oust incumbent Congressman Jared Moskowitz. But will voters take Larkin's far-left bait? Watch.
Are we ready for free college? Are we ready for a Green New Deal? Are we ready to end U.S. military aid to Israel and end this genocide?
We should follow in the footsteps of Ronald Reagan's immigration policy and grant amnesty to the millions of people that are living, working, paying taxes. The current configuration of the State of Israel is a religious supremacist one that privileges Jewish citizens above Palestinians.
Another big race tonight, progressive activist Elijah Manley, who is taking on longtime Dem Rep Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And he says deporting murderers is just like sending them on vacation.
What I'm saying is if a murderer comes into the United States of America, sending them back for them to just come back over the border doesn't make sense to me. If you're a murderer coming to this country, put you in jail. That's all I'm saying. I mean, Republicans want to give these folks a vacation. I'm not interested in giving a criminal a vacation.
But James Carville isn't worried about the surging socialists. The Ragin' Cajun telling Jesse that no one takes the DSA candidates seriously.
You're not worried about the communists taking over the party?
No, they're a bunch of silly people. Those people you had on there, those DSA people, they're a pack of fools. No one pays attention to them. They ain't gonna do anything.
Jesse, all right, so we might agree, common sense might agree, but there's a lot of voters that seem to be indicating that they don't agree, and these guys are winning primaries.
Carville always does this. We show him for a year screaming and hollering about the threat of communism. He's going to quit the party, and he comes on Fox, and he's like, there's nothing there. I'm not going to get fooled by Carville again. Next time, I'll be ready for you, James. The state of Florida really skews Jewish, elderly, more conservative, more Latin America. They've suffered the actual pain of communism. So I don't think they're going to create much inroads there. But I have a little advice for some communists that are running in Florida. Here's what I would say differently. Instead of saying amnesty and abolish ICE, you say, I want to protect migrants who are working at our restaurants, farms, and at the villages. Instead of saying free college, you say, I'm going to prosecute university presidents for gouging because tuition is too damn high. Instead of saying the Green New Deal, you say, we're in the Sunshine State. I want solar panels everywhere. And you don't say you end aid to Israel. You say you reduce aid to Israel because you always want to keep a little aid to our allies and give them weapons so you have leverage over them. That is my advice. Now, this guy who says we're giving people wanted for homicide vacations, that's not how it works. At the border, you don't catch and release murderers. When you catch them, you call Interpol or you call the State Department or DHS, they run them through, and then you lock them up and then actually transfer them to the country that has the warrant out for their arrest. You don't say, I just turn around and go back to Mexico. Bye-bye, adios. That doesn't happen. Now, I understand the abolish the Senate thing because a couple of years ago, you had Democrat senators in Ohio, you had them in Montana, you had them in West Virginia. A couple of years ago, you had them in Louisiana, Alaska. But what happened? They had a 60-vote supermajority in the Senate under Barack Obama. But they blew it. They overreached. They went cuckoo. And then the rest of the country said, whoa, we just want normies. That's why they're in the position they're in. But instead of blowing everything up, they're like 3 months away from maybe retaking the Senate. And they're going to screw it up by saying they want to abolish it because it scares the crap out of everybody. So if they could just hold on like a kid in the car, you're like 5 minutes away from home and the kids are just pulling each other's hairs out in the back seat. Take a deep breath, delayed gratification. You're almost home.
There was a lot there. Do you think Jesse's advice is so good, obviously, but do you think that will hold? Because a lot of these guys are sticking to their very radical left talking points and call signs.
First of all, I think Jesse has a lot of time to think. because he came back from vacation. He's like, I got ideas, and I'm going to share them. And he's not wrong, right? Those would be better ways to describe things, but that's not how they do it. These DSA candidates in Florida tonight, it's going to be a very interesting exercise. They are not compelling. They are not household names. It's not El Sayed. It's not Hong. It's not any of these people. Mamdani. Even Katie Wilson has a little bit more of a name than these guys. I just learned about Oliver Larkin this morning. Moskowitz, I think, has been a pretty good member, right? Like for his constituents. He comes on Fox as well. He's funny. He gives a little bit of a chance for bipartisanship when it merits it. So I think he should probably win tonight. But if Larkin were to win, this then would become a competitive seat for Republicans because it's a newly drawn district and would probably be one of the races that Bill Hemmer was chasing on the board on election night.
Kat, how do you see this?
Yeah, look, I think obviously democratic socialism is gaining popularity nationwide, I think to a concerning extent to me as a capitalist who cares about things like freedom and prosperity. And I do think that it's something that Democrats and Republicans should be looking at, why it appeals to people, particularly young people who feel locked out of certain aspects of the American dream for good reason. But I don't think so much in the state of Florida. I mean, Florida is still one of the few states that has the belief that to me is quite logical, but is seen as for some reason radical by so many people, that if you make money, then you don't have to have it be taken from you by the state by force. You get to keep there's no state income tax there. So in one of the few states where there is no state income tax, and that is specifically why a lot of people have left some of these other places where, I mean, people in New York City, people in California, a lot of people who have the freedom to move, those of us around this table, we're kind of stuck because we have these jobs here, which are wonderful and we love them, but we do not have a choice, really. A lot of people who can move, they want to move because they want to keep their money. Even if they might support some of these other causes, they might be more socially liberal. At the end of the day, you look at your bank account and you're like, whoa, I don't want to be spending this much on taxes. So I highly doubt that the people of Florida we're going to be seeing from them what we've seen in some other states, because a lot of people are there for that reason. You can always be surprised. I never say I know anything for sure because life surprises all of us every single day. But Florida is one of those few states really where I think that it's not going to be as popular, particularly when it comes to, people, they're there, they want to keep their money. That's why a lot of people actually went there. That's why they went there. And things, it's just, they're well aware that free college, there's no such thing as free college. It just means that somebody else is paying for it who's not actually going. And that's a lot of the reason that people are there to begin with. So I'd be shocked to see this take over Florida.
And interestingly, Harold, all right, so first of all, I wanted to come to you as the closer so you can sort of respond to anyone's points that you want. But also, I'll tee you up this way, which is that as Kat's talking about the Florida landscape, we saw in the last election that there were historic numbers coming out of Florida for Trump, that now internal polling seems to reflect a shift. And a lot of people up until now are like, well, who will never vote DSA? Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, like a lot of these groups that Democrats, I think that they have in the bag are totally against these radical notions in large part, especially because many of them know what it actually means. What's your take?
I think your description of it is about right. It's good to see everybody. I hadn't seen Kat in a while. This is Jesse, not only have you spent some time away and really been thinking, I think the advice you're giving, I think is smart advice, but here's where I differ, not with your analysis, but and I think refreshing. These people are telling us what they want to do. Yeah. They don't want to reduce aid. They don't want to, they're not out to go ask the president. Dana had this idea years ago when we were talking about when President Biden, I think wrongly and illegally, decided to relieve and forgive all of this student debt. We said the real issue here is the cost of tuition. No one, Republican or Democrat, held any hearings with these presidents over that period of time. Once we all lambasted and politically told President Biden he was wrong, he was wrong. But he was right about the fact that college tuition is high. But they're telling us what they want to do. And it's unfortunate that, it's not unfortunate not taking their advice. I'm refreshed that they're telling us exactly what they want to do. So if we did elect them and they lied to us, we wouldn't be surprised. Two, Democrats, at a time when the economic worries of everyday Americans are at a high, there's nothing wrong with a little food fight and a little going back and forth in these primaries. But I would agree with Emily. If we believe that the DSA, their ideas are the right ones for the country, then we're going to lose. We may win a few primaries, and I was delighted to see the Wisconsin outcome last week with the young fella Crowley coming from behind. Even Al Sayed, who only won by a very, very small amount. This is a Democratic Party that is, I think, more concerned about economic issues and concerns. And when they're confronted, Emily, with the notion and the reality that the DSA are not for them, they're for something completely outside of the Democratic mainstream. And I think James was right on your show last night, Jesse. I think more and more voters are voting the way they're voting. Why not Democrats, and some around the table may disagree with me, but why not identify our economic plan to be let's eliminate all of President Trump's tariffs because they're driving up costs? College tuition is way too high. We should figure out ways in which to bring all these college presidents in, and that's link what kids do out of college to what they owe back when they leave. Let's eliminate the first $75,000 of income from federal taxes. They only pay 3% of the taxes as is. And I would argue one of the things I'm disappointed with President Trump in, and a lot of Democrats didn't like it from the beginning, I wish he had stayed on this notion to try to reduce the size of government. If you're a Democrat, say you want to reduce the size of the federal government by 5% to pay for these things. There's enough waste there to do it. But if we stay on this DSA track, and we entertain these people, I won't go as far as my friend James, who used the word fools, but you are foolish if you believe these ideas are not only going to win, but are going to make the country stronger and better. That's the notion and the reality and the goal of politics. Not to get on television, not to yell and scream, and certainly not to be supportive of terrorist organizations. It's to try to make the country better, Democrat and Republican alike. That's what I do.
All right.
Perfect closer. All right, guys. Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.